Before we jump into the episode, I wanted to let you know about something that is so exciting that we have on the forefront. We will soon be releasing a course called Brand Belief, which is all about how to build a brand that you and your clients believe in. This goes far beyond just selecting a logo and a few colors to go with it. This is an intuitive journey about your customers' needs, their desires, their values, and how you can make their lives easier through the services that you provide. This is about how you can be of service in this world through a brand that has both longevity and legacy attached to it. Click the link in the description. That will tell you a bit more information, and it will allow you to sign up so that you can be notified when this course is launching. Now we hope you enjoy the episode. Hi everyone, Ariana here from Well-Fed Photography, and today I'm joined by Leah Bryans, and she is going to speak to us about who she is, the evolution of how she came to do what it is that she's doing professionally. And while I could speak a few words myself, I'm just going to let Leah introduce herself, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, hi. So yeah, my name's Leah. Thanks so much for having me here. It's really lovely. Well, I am a mum of two, and I'm originally from Lisburn, which is a town, it's actually a city near Belfast, in Northern Ireland. And I suppose I grew up as a really kind of sporty kid who just wanted to be involved in every kind of sport and activity. And I loved horses. So anytime I could be near or on a horse, excellent, that was life. And I suppose that sportiness, and also having these two amazing role models in my life. My mom and dad were both really, my dad was an athletics coach, and my mom used to train in the gym when, in the 80s, when I don't know if there were that many people going to gyms in Ireland. And interesting, the lady who owned the gym that mom went to was, she's now Dame Mary Peters. So she won a gold medal in the Olympics. And she's just such an inspirational figure. And the exercises that I used to sit and watch my mom in the gym, and I do my homework watching her. And I learned so much there. And two inspiring women there, Mary Peters and my mum. And so I suppose then when we were deciding what we were going to do in careers night, when I was about 16, physiotherapy came up, and I really never looked back. It's I suppose it combines my interest in physical fitness and wellness with this career in a really caring profession. Yeah, I was so lucky to be 15 years old and literally just happen upon this dream career. I picked it then and I still love it now. So it's great.
That's amazing. And did you always, now I know that you kind of specialize in pelvic health physiotherapy, but have you always done that, or is that something that came later?
No, it's strange. I think like all physio students, we think we want to do sports, and then we realize that there's a whole world of physio out there. And I was lucky enough to have my very first job straight out of college was actually in the National Maternity Hospital. I covered a summer locum, and that was great. And I got into women's health, and I did pediatrics as well at that stage. And then I kind of thought, I'm very young and early in my career to be so focused. So I went off and worked for 4 years in a general hospital. And through that, I became a Pilates instructor, and I did loads of different stuff. And then 2007, I came back to the National Maternity Hospital. And I suppose I've focused ever since on pelvic health and women's health in general.
So you had this focus before you even became a mother yourself, or did motherhood influence it
Yeah.
at all?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's strange. I used to feel, sometimes I'd feel a little bit of a fraud, because there I was teaching antenatal classes and giving people advice on how to have a baby and what to do with it. Never having been pregnant or been a mother. And I used to think, is this okay? But then I realized I had a lot of knowledge and I had this professionalism to bring to the table. Whereas then I became a mom in 2013. And that was a real game changer, because I suddenly felt like I nearly should write letters of apology back to women that I saw before. I just didn't realize this seismic shift that occurs. like I can remember kind of giving someone an exercise program, and they came back, oh, I didn't do it. I couldn't find the time to do it. And I remember being a bit like, yeah, you couldn't find 5 minutes. Well, your back's not going to get better. Well, I didn't speak to her like that. Of course I didn't. But in my head, I was like, oh yeah, excuses. Now I realize, and particularly this pandemic thing, we're at home all day, every day. But where does the time go? And how can it take a whole day to just feed and look after these children? So it's really hard to find that time for self-care and for healing for mothers, I suppose, finding the time to recover from pregnancy and delivery. And, it's really difficult. And that's something that, you only maybe really learn by living that life.
Were there things that you experienced in your own pregnancies or through the, labor and birth process that you hadn't anticipated? Or like, did you think through your training that it would go one specific way and then maybe you experienced something different? Or what was that like for you?
Yeah, and actually, my story is really positive, like annoyingly so. My personal experience of pregnancy was it was a dream, and I taught Pilates until I was 38 weeks, and I was active, and I had no pain. But I know that a lot of that was because of the knowledge I had, and the minute there might have been a twinge, I knew what to do. And I worked in the National Maternity Hospital. I mean, I had any little worry, I had someone to ask like that, so there was no problem in that regard. But then I think what I was anticipating was that, I would have pelvic pain and I would be incontinent and I would have a really bad tear and I thought I would have all these things because that's all I see in pregnancy. But, I have to always, remember that statistics that we quote is 1 in 3 women will have urinary incontinence, but 2 out of 3 won't. 20% of women have back pain in pregnancy, 80% don't. So I was in that 80%, but all I know about is the 20%. So that was I suppose a difference. I'm used to the, I don't know, disabling part of pregnancy where literally it's worse than a car accident on the physical body for some women and emotionally. But my experience was quite good.
And did you have to find a way to empathize? Because like you said, you didn't understand some aspects until you became pregnant yourself, like even finding the time and those types of things.
Yeah.
So where did you draw upon this empathy to be able to connect with other women?
Do you mean where did I find the empathy before I had the experience, or?
Yeah, or even
Yeah,
having had positive experiences, but still
yeah,
be able to
yeah.
connect with people who
I
maybe weren't.
actually, yeah, I actually think that the empathy became even stronger because I could always empathize with someone who was in pain, or, in my previous career as a respiratory physio where I dealt with people with debilitating lung disease, I could empathize that it was so hard for them to walk around their house. Um, I could empathize there, but I think that it became stronger when I realized, I suppose, postnatally, when you are tired, you're sleep deprived, and yet you can still get out of bed and get to your baby. And I would deal with women who were on crutches. And I really thought, oh my God, how much harder is it for someone who literally cannot stand on their own 2 feet, who cannot walk to the bathroom? How do they soothe their crying baby where I walked around the house like this for hours, with a baby on my shoulder, and that I think just made me feel so lucky. And so, so lucky, I don't know if that's the right word, but happy that I was so strong in my own body, that I had trained in all my Pilates and I had done all these things that I preached to people. And I felt it had stood to me, and I felt so lucky that I had that knowledge and that strength, and I didn't have pain. And I mean, it's so difficult to deal with that and with your baby.
So did the positive experiences that you had, did that add to, I guess, increase the confidence in what you were teaching to know that it could bring about positive outcomes for people?
Yeah, I suppose so. A bit of a sense of, oh, this works. Yeah, yeah, I suppose so.
And I know
Um,
that with April being Caesarean Awareness Month,
yeah,
if you
yeah,
wouldn't mind, could we touch on that as well? Because you and
mm,
I share the similarity in that
yeah,
we've had two cesareans.
yeah.
So what did that look like for you from a recovery standpoint and with your own knowledge around, pelvic health physio? Did any of that come
Mm.
into play for you postpartum?
Yeah, so I suppose my sections were actually both planned. So, such a different experience to someone who has an emergency section. So again, as far as deliveries go, it wasn't traumatic in that sense. And I do remember though when my first baby, he was breech, and I kind of joke he's still difficult to turn. He's a very strong-willed little fella, and I remember like before I found out that he was breech, I was doing all my hypnobirthing. I was, ready for a really positive birth experience, and I do remember feeling a bit like, oh, I'm not going to experience labor. I'm not going to experience contractions. I'm going to lose out on the mystery of when is he going to arrive. Well, I didn't know it was a boy either, but when will this baby arrive? So I remember feeling a bit about that. So that was one slight negative to the planned C-section. But the recovery afterwards again was okay because I knew how to move. I knew how to get out of bed. I knew all these things to do. What I didn't do though was I didn't rest enough, and I thought I was Wonder Woman. And I was on the way home from hospital. I decided to go for a walk. Why would you do that? Got a few steps into the Phoenix Park, realizing, oh yeah, this walking I've been doing around the ward is shuffling. And what did I think? What kind of superhuman did I think I was that I could go for a walk just because I went for a walk the day before he was born? And I remember just having to say to my husband, carry on. I went back to the car. And the other thing I did was, which was silly, was just before my 6-week checkup, I was like, oh, I'm feeling okay. And I was like, oh, you're not supposed to drive for the first 6 weeks, but if your doctor says it's okay, then it's okay. So I was like, oh, I'm totally okay. And driving's not difficult. And I always say this to patients, it's not the driving, it's where are you going? And what are you doing when you get there? And what are you going to do with lifting the baby out of the car and lifting the car seat onto the wheels and getting those silly wheels out of your car? And oh, I really hurt myself. And you know what? I did it again the second time. Because I don't know. I think I'm Superwoman, but I'm not. I'm not. So that was a learning curve. Just like do what you tell everybody else to do.
Well, let's actually talk about the 6-week checkup, because that's something that I wanted to
Yeah.
cover with you anyway, because I feel like for anyone who's not familiar with the 6-week postpartum checkup, that's a normal thing. At least here in Ireland, we would go have the GP typically
Mm-hmm.
check us over, like the mothers that have just given birth, check us over. And then a lot of times you're just kind of signed off to do whatever you want, whether that's, engaging in intimacy again, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's exercising again. But can
Mm-hmm.
that be problematic, just to have this 6-week period be the time when
Yeah.
you're just written off to go back to your life before a baby?
Yeah, it's just like 6 weeks is some kind of magic number, isn't it? I mean, you break your arm, 6 weeks, it'll be better, because to be fair, the body does a huge amount of healing and recovery within that first 6 weeks and much less so thereafter. So I suppose in one sense, if you have a problem at 6 weeks, you have a problem, you need to sort it out. And I suppose they're going to pick that up. If you have a problem at 2 or 3 weeks, it might get better. So it's okay. Let's just wait and see what we're like at 6 weeks, because, it's kind of physiology. But back to the real question, which is, I think there is a little bit of a problem with just those routine 6 week checks, because, GPs are general practitioners and they have so much knowledge on so many things, but they're maybe not experts in pelvic health. And also, I think one problem that GPs struggle with is that they're time poor. They just don't have enough time to give to every patient that comes in. And often the mum and the baby are booked in for a checkup at the same time. And the GP will probably say, well, mum, how are you? And you go, it's your first day out often, and you get the makeup on and you pull yourself together and you push that buggy in and you smile and you nod and you say, yeah, I'm fine, yeah. And you have a laugh when they say, so contraception, and you say, yeah, no way, you're grand, don't need to have that conversation. And then, when you've had that giggle and you appear to be fine, then, right, let's have a look at baby. Because to be fair, the baby can't speak for himself, so the GP will devote then as much time as possible making sure baby's okay. And mum is left with the smile and the yeah, I'm grand. So I've heard that a lot from mums, that, and I've tried to empower women at antenatal classes to kind of almost, I don't know if warn them is the right word, but prepare them is better, more positive word, for the checkup, and say, look, if you have any concerns at all, please ask, because the GP is there to help. But if you sit and you smile and you nod and you say, I'm grand, that's it, you're grand, and it's over. And you can forget about anybody asking you again how you are, which is not enough, I think. And, there is such a drive and such an awareness in Ireland among pelvic health practitioners and among midwives. And, anyone in the maternity hospital will say, there's not enough care for postnatal women. They're the forgotten, and once you're 6 weeks, you're normal again. You're back to being a normal person, not a pregnant woman who's like treasured and minded. You're just back you go. So as I said, in the antenatal classes, I used to try to prepare women to say, look, if you have a problem, you need to ask about it. You need to try your best to ask someone, and it sounds wrong, but ask them to examine you. Look at my wound, look at my perineum, because that doesn't always happen. And I think the more we talk about it and raise awareness of this, and hopefully it will become mainstream care, like the way it is. In France has always talked about that every woman has routine 6 visits with a physio, for each pregnancy. I mean, that would be brilliant, because now there is help out there, but it's within the private sector. So if you've got the power to pay for it and there's somebody locally that you can travel to, then great, go. But it's not accessible for all women, and it should be.
Yes. I the only reason why I bring up that question is because I had Martina from Fit Menage. She was the person that was my personal trainer after postpartum with my son, and then prenatally and postpartum with my daughter. And it was really her that encouraged me to go have the checkup before I established working out again, regardless of what the GP said. And like you said, it's nothing against the GP. It's just they might not have specialized knowledge. And so, it's nice to have someone that is very educated on pelvic health and what that might look like. And what it did was it guided her on what she was able to do with me, on the things that I needed to work through, or just to keep in mind with certain exercises. And that I'd really like to learn more about what people typically come to you for. Like, what are the things that you see the most?
Well, with thanks to people like Martina and some of her colleagues who I know well, like Lorna Dwyer from Your Mama Health, and Maggie Lawler. People like her, like them, refer a lot of women to me. It's almost like they insist, look, you should have this check, go and see a physiotherapist. So I do see a lot of women presently. to come to have like a postnatal check. And what we do there is we have a look at three main areas, I suppose, is are they struggling with any back or pelvic pain, or it can be neck and shoulder pain from a holding, and everything what we do is here when we're looking after a newborn, so often it's working on neck and shoulders. So back pain, so that's often related to their posture. I'll also have a look at their abdominal muscles, because for a percentage of women there can be a separation of their abdominal muscles, and I'll examine that, I'll assess that, and I'll give them then sort of, I suppose, bespoke advice on that. And then the main thing, I guess, is pelvic floor examination, because we all know we're supposed to be doing pelvic floor exercises, and research is so strong on, if you can strengthen your pelvic floor, it will improve your ability to hold on to urine, to hold wind, to have greater, I suppose, sensation and satisfaction, we'll call it, with intercourse. Yet it's very hard to do those exercises, right? Only 30% of women can actually do a pelvic floor exercise with a verbal instruction. So we need to actually examine. The same way, if you had a sore knee, I'd look at it. If you had a weakness in your arm, I'd ask you to move it, and I'd feel it, and I'd test it. So, and that pelvic floor examination, I suppose, is gold standard for anyone who's struggling with symptoms of urinary incontinence or pelvic organ prolapse or any bowel control problem either.
Yeah, and if someone's experiencing something like sensitivity when it comes to sex, like let's say they've had their 6-week check, they've told their grand, they go off and they're intimate again, and then they find that there's a lot of sensitivity, maybe even a year and a half later. Is that something that they can come to you for help with? Is it something that they just have to deal with for the rest of their lives? Like, what does that look like? What are the possible outcomes for them?
Okay, so it's a big topic, but yes, I suppose is the answer. Yes. Come to see a pelvic health physiotherapist, because again, the pelvic floor is this group of muscles. It's not just one muscle. There's muscles running front to back, side to side. There's a superficial layer, a deep layer. There's loads of muscles, and sometimes we're dealing with, there could be scar tissue there from an episiotomy. There could be, sort of dryness, which is linked sometimes to breastfeeding, because hormonal changes just changed, I suppose, our natural lubrication there. So I think a huge part about pain with intimacy is about educating women and supporting them, and helping them understand their own body, and help them understand maybe why things hurt and how to get around that, and different ways to maybe desensitize the scar tissue, let's say, to learn to actually let go of the pelvic floor muscles. Because if anything is tense and we push it, it's gonna hurt more. Whereas if we can relax into something. But if you're anticipating it being painful, it's very difficult to relax. So we almost have to work on down training muscles, getting the appropriate tone in the muscle, whether it's that it is too tight or it is too weak or whatever. And you don't know that until you actually examine a woman and hear her story, I suppose, as well, and listen to what it is that's causing her trouble. So we can work, I suppose, there's a lot of layers to it, and from a physio point of view, I suppose I've seen it all before, I've heard it all before. And so I'm really happy to look after patients who are having intimacy issues. But I guess, like, from a physiotherapy point of view, strictly speaking, we deal with the physical. That's not necessarily 100% true, but, so if there is something beyond a physical tightness or soreness within the muscle, I would refer that lady on perhaps to a psychosexual therapist. And there's a few of them around who I know, who I've met with different courses and worked with. And so sometimes I need to refer on, but quite often physiotherapy and a listening ear and an educated person can help with that a lot. And it's definitely not something you have to put up with for the rest of your life. I forgot to clarify that at the start of the question.
That's completely okay. And I'm wondering
Mm.
too, like, so we mentioned, people who might have sensitivity or pain, but are there also people that come in and they've like lost sensitivity, or they've lost that ability to experience sensation through intimacy?
Yeah, we would have patients like that also. It's almost, if we oversimplify it a little bit, it's, if it's painful, often it's because the muscle is a little too tight, let's say. And if there's no sensation, then perhaps the muscle is a little weak and doesn't give enough grip, almost, if that's the right word. So it could be, it's almost one extreme to the other, but there's a few gray areas there, because also there's a huge amount of nerve supply there, and nerves can be bruised and overstretched during delivery. And so sometimes it is actually a nerve thing, that the sensation is actually altered. So a physio can kind of figure out what it is, which one of those three things it might be.
Yeah, and you talk about tone and having the proper tone. And I feel like the other thing besides the 6-week check, that's kind of the blanket check, we see all the time in women's magazines or just on the internet about do your kegels, however you pronounce it, like, but that might not be the right prescription for everyone. And can you speak to why that might be?
Yeah. Well, so yeah, muscle tone is something that's just bread and butter to physios, it basically is the natural resting energy nearly within a muscle. And I think we can appreciate it if everybody has, most people have probably had that experience where they maybe wake up and there's a creak in their neck and they're kind of stuck like this. So let's call that high tone. The muscle is tight, and it's tender to touch, and it's not allowing you to move. You have to do this or look like that. You can't just turn your head. Okay, so that muscle is too tight. Sorry,
Yes.
all the time acting things out. That muscle is too tight. That tone is too high. So high tone is not the same as strength. So if you're doing kegels incorrectly, you maybe are just squeezing and not letting go. I think also because there is such a lot of information, which is great, 30% of people will get it first time and be doing it right, but the other 70, maybe not so much. But the message is out there. These muscles are important. But if you're not doing them correctly, you could actually be going around all the time thinking, oh, I have to squeeze, I have to hold, I'm supposed to do these all day. I'm supposed to do them when I'm walking. I'm meant to do them when I feed the baby. Oh God, I forgot to do them today. I better do 20. And maybe you're overdoing it and maybe not actually letting the muscle go. So like if you're training in the gym with Martina, let's say, and she gives you an exercise, you do your 10 reps, you do your bicep curl, you lift that weight up, you put it down, you do that 10 times, and then you put the weight down and you walk away. You don't carry it around in the gym all day. You don't carry the dumbbell home to get a bit more out of your workout. And I suppose if we don't actually let the pelvic floor relax in between our little exercise sessions, and we can become hypertonic, higher tone, which can lead to pain and the issues with intimacy, and also give feelings of almost like what women describe when they have a prolapse. So this higher tone in the muscle can actually almost masquerade as lots of other issues. So we can sometimes have difficulty emptying the bladder or the bowel, because the muscle's gotten too tight.
Wow. And so what would your stance be on people who might go out and buy like a yoni egg or jade egg, and they're using that to try to build up tone when maybe they haven't had an examination and they don't know where they even stand with the tone?
Yeah. Well, I suppose the simple answer is maybe before you do buy any of those things, I would probably consult with a pelvic floor specialist physio, because they're not, they're not the answer to everything. They don't work for everybody. Yeah, that's my simple answer there is I would, before I would invest in any of those things or put anything up there, I'd want someone to tell me it was the right thing to be putting up there, you know?
Yeah. I'd like to circle back to cesareans just for a minute, because I think sometimes there can also be a misconception that if someone delivers a baby via cesarean, that they won't face things like incontinence, or they won't face things that maybe someone who's delivered vaginally will come into contact with or will experience. So can you speak to that and whether or not that's
Yeah.
true?
I suppose that is not true. that is, we'll do some myth busting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, 25% of women will develop urinary incontinence in their first pregnancy, or even before their first pregnancy. Okay, so it can pre-exist no matter of the type of delivery that you have. You can develop it in pregnancy, because of the extra weight on the muscles, hormonal changes, so pregnancy can cause a lot of problems. Never mind the mode of delivery, and hormones get quite a lot of bad press, but it's because they do make change occur within our bodies. I mean, the hormones that we have when we're breastfeeding are helping us sustain life. They're creating the food to feed another human being. And so always, if you have a little bit of more of something, you sometimes have a little bit less of something else. And so what I would find is that often post-section, women can still be very kind of delicate within the vaginal tissues and within the tissues around the back passage. And so things like piles and hemorrhoids and fissures and all these really nasty, unpleasant, painful things around the back passage are prevalent and do happen in women who have had sections. It's not to do with just pushing a baby out. It's the pregnancy, and it's just that effect on our body. So it's not the easy way out, that's for sure.
Yes.
And I think it's still really important to have the pelvic floor muscles checked, even if you had a section, because it's pregnancy, as I say, that causes a lot of that kind of weakness. And also, if we've never done these exercises before, it's just a good idea to see if we're doing them right.
Thank you for dispelling those myths. I just think it's so important, because it's all education, right? It's all like knowledge. Having the knowledge and using it is where the power lies. So if people can know that actually, you can still face challenges. I had a section with my son unplanned. So I went through the whole labor process and ended up also having a section. And there were times, like, I remember I wanted to wear him. I wanted to be like the baby wearing mom, but literally, like, when I would try to wear him, the weight was so heavy that I could feel things. I still didn't even know what was happening, because I never went to a pelvic health physio, but I could still feel changes that was like sending signals to my body to say, no, like, you need to take him off. It's too heavy. Like, I couldn't, even a few months old, I couldn't sustain the weight of carrying him. So I think, it's just nice for people to know that it's okay to go get checked out, whether you had a baby via, cesarean delivery or vaginal delivery. It's still okay to go and have that check done. Are there things that are maybe unexpected, like, that you can cover, that you can help people with, that they don't realize? Do they come with just thinking that maybe it's around incontinence, and maybe there are other areas that you can help with? Or what would you say to that?
Yeah, I suppose, well, you've already asked the question about pain with intimacy. I think a lot of women don't. I ask questions because I'm ready for the answers. Okay, so when someone comes to me, I kind of have this, it's not a checklist because it's all just coming out of my head, but I ask them questions about their bladder, their bowel, any sensations of prolapse that they might have, feelings of heaviness, dragging. I ask them all these questions about how they poo, which is, for some people, they're like, what are you asking me this for? But for others, it's like, oh God, I'm so glad you asked, because people don't want to volunteer that information. And like that, as I say, I've seen it all before, I've heard it all before, and I've got the answers generally. So I think maybe problems around constipation and pain going to the toilet are probably things that you don't realize a physio would help you with. And it's not only postpartum. I mean, part of my job in the National Maternity Hospital, I worked in a satellite clinic of the hospital called the Pelvic Floor Centre. Very glamorous. And we dealt with men and women of all ages, never had babies, just postnatal, postmenopausal, we did really good work with those patients, if I don't say so myself. And like 80% of the patients who came, it's a consultant-led clinic, so they were coming to see a colorectal surgeon or a urogyne. Things had gotten so bad for them that they thought they needed surgery and they needed a doctor to fix it. And actually 80% of the patients that came through that clinic responded to physio, and they improved, and they never needed surgery, and they were discharged, feeling so much better with just physio, which was really a lot of advice and reassurance and work on their muscles. And sometimes we use the devices that you talked about earlier, but often it was just looking at their lifestyle and giving them good, solid, evidence-based advice, that set them on their way again.
You mentioned a lot of that would have been referral based from doctors. How do most people come to you? Is it through a GP referral? Is it through someone like for me, it was my personal trainer that said, oh, you need to go have this exam before we start training again. How do most people come to you?
Yeah, I am on a career break at the moment from the National Maternity Hospital, and so I'm just working in my own private clinic. And so literally people can just ring me up and get an appointment. But yeah, I often get referrals or, but it's usually just someone will call me and say, my GP told me to ring you, or Martina told me to ring you. Or I have a few consultants that I know of who would often write to me and say, will you contact this lady? But usually it's very much patients coming to me, and they're coming asking for my help. And that's great, because there's sometimes an element of doubt in the patients that we might have seen in that clinic, where the doctor said, look, I'm not operating on you until you've had physio. And they'd come in, they're a bit like, I'm only here because the doctor said I had to come. You spend the first session just trying to convince them that you could actually do something for them, whereas people that come to me now, they want my advice, they want my help, and that's great. It's like, right, let's go. It's like they already believe in me, which is really nice. The other ones only believe at the end,
That's actually that's brought a big question to my mind, because I suppose my mind is so on the postpartum period, kind of immediately after. But you have people who maybe their children are in their 20s or 30s, and they've been experiencing symptoms like incontinence for years, and they've never gotten it taken care of, and finally they're coming in to see you. Like, do you have people that are of that age range that are coming in to avail of your services?
Yeah, I sure do. And in fact, this postnatal check thing is, I'd say it's only there's an amazing physio in the UK called Maria Elliott, who set up the Mummy MOT. And that's maybe 10 years ago. Maybe a little more. So, this idea of a postnatal check and really looking after your body postnatally is relatively new. So actually the patients that I would have seen more in the last few years would actually be what you just described. Women who are kind of, they've been just getting on with things. They've been putting up with, maybe we'll call it maybe minor symptoms that they could just, maybe ignore. The odd time they might have to change their underwear, they might wear a pad, things like that. And then actually a tipping point would come when maybe around menopause, when again, I keep talking about hormones, but they're responsible for quite a lot of stuff. So when our estrogen levels start to decline rapidly in our sort of around 50, the problem becomes a problem. And they realize, oh God, I can't go for a walk without having to stop and go to the toilet. I can't do this. I can't. Or maybe when they become grandparents. So suddenly they're back at that very physically demanding stage of picking up a 2-year-old and, or a heavy 1-year-old who still can't walk, or maybe can, and you're walking along holding their hand the whole time. And they suddenly go, oh God, I feel like there's something wrong down there. So actually that makes up a huge proportion of the patients that I see. But, hopefully, as you say, as education and empowerment for women, grows and grows, I might see less of those if I get them postnatally and almost don't let them get to that point, So that was particularly the case for women I would have seen with fecal incontinence and problems with bowel control, because generally, if you can go to the toilet once a day, you're all right, and women might be able to time it that they can go before they go to work, and it's fine. But then as they get older, they actually find, no, I actually have a real problem with this. I can't control this. I'm having accidents, and that's something people don't talk about. There's adverts on TV about peeing when you're on a trampoline. There's 10 a lady adverts in all these magazines. There isn't one talking about having poo accidents, and yet they happen.
Do you feel like we are in the process of moving away from that, maybe the shamefulness around this, or even the just getting on with it-ness that people have done in other generations?
100%. There is such a shift, even in the time I've worked in the maternity hospital. So I started there sort of full time in 2007. And back then we used to get referrals from the gynae clinic and for pelvic floor problems. And we maybe got about 9. I remember I used to count the statistics, 9 or 10 a month of women, actually kind of like I just described, maybe perimenopausal and starting to have issues with incontinence and prolapse. There's about, I don't know, nearly 100 a month now. And I think that is because women don't accept things anymore, and we allow self-referral. And, women are saying, I want to be active. I know there's a solution. I'm not putting up with it. I'm going to talk about it. And I actually think it's a bit controversial, but a lot of physios hate those 10 a lady adverts because they're like, oh, you can't just put a pad on and get on with it. But I'm actually happy that it starts the conversation and that it's out there and it's mainstream and it's not something you need to be embarrassed about. To me, a pad is something that protects your skin and keeps you dry until you get, keeps your skin happy until you get the right treatment and the right strength. It's like, if you need it, you need it, and it's there, and we talk about it, and we know it's there, and it's in Tesco's or whatever. And I think we know enough now as well to know that it's not the only thing. Women aren't putting up with things, and they know there is an answer, and the doctors are getting better at listening to women and saying, okay, you have a problem, I'll send you to the physio and let them deal with it. I don't know the answer, but I'm sure there is one, where they used to just be a bit, oh, well, you're pregnant, you've just had a baby. There, look at your lovely baby. Sure, aren't you all right? Go on. Be very bold speaking like that. But, that kind of is the narrative that we've heard a few decades ago. But it's not the same narrative now. Women will not put up with that anymore.
No, not at all. I'm curious because of the people like Martina and Maggie and that are so vocal about it. Like Martina speaks about it so regularly in her own journey. She hasn't had children of her own yet, but she's dealt with incontinence herself. So I'm wondering, I know you're kind of newly entering the social media world, but how do you feel about there being voices around these topics for women?
I think it's amazing. The only thing that, I'm kind of quiet. I've upped my game a little bit on social media lately, but I'm pretty quiet on it. And I think one of the reasons I am quiet on it is because, yes, it's really good to have a message out there. And yes, it's really good for us all to talk about it and promote what we can do. But I still think that it's really important that women know that their treatment has to be individualized. We treat, it's a big tagline I've always used, I get interviews and things, but you treat the individual, not the condition. And I've had a few patients that stand out to me, you know, who have come to me and they've said, oh, I've read this and I've read this, and do I have that? And I've been reading it. And I'm kind of like, whoa, it's okay. You don't actually have that. You have this, you know, and you don't need to worry about that because you don't have that, but you have something else. And here's what you do about what's wrong with you, you know. And I think sometimes having all that knowledge is actually a wee bit mind blowing and can be a bit distressing as well. So it's about finding the balance, I think, to go,
Yes.
look, there's problems out there that exist for women, and there's help out there for women. Go find out if you have a problem and then deal with it, rather than making one because you've read that someone else has one, you know.
Yes.
That's my only about it.
One of the best things, I have to say, one of the best things I did for myself as a mother is around 6 months postpartum with my son, I broke up with Google. I just decided I was never going to Google another thing again that had to do with like a health symptom or something I was worried about. I just wasn't going to do it. And honestly, it's been like the best to let that go, and to actually, if I do feel like there's something up or that I need to get checked out, to go get it checked out by someone that has the specialized knowledge, rather than wrecking my head over what it could be, when, like you said, it might not be that at all. So I love going and knowing that there are people like you out there that have the specialized knowledge that can educate and also provide a path to well-being, or a path beyond whatever that scare or the health issue or the challenge is. So that's really powerful, and I'm glad that you've said that. Before we finish off the interview, I know that we spoke about our similarities in having experienced cesareans, and you're a mother of two, I'm a mother of two. I know you said you had a very easy pregnancy, and also that you've experienced breastfeeding. So I'm curious to know, did you find breastfeeding to be easy as well? Was it plain sailing, or was it challenging?
No, it's so challenging. It's funny because, you know, from my years of naivety working in the maternity hospital, and, you know, I saw women struggling with breastfeeding, and I also knew so much about the, you know, the evidence as to why it's so good. But I went into motherhood with a bit of a, sure, if it works, it works. And sure, it's not the end of the world if it doesn't. I'm not going to become a martyr over this. Well, literally after the cesarean, coming down from recovery, getting settled into the room, having a little puke, they gave me the baby. They gave me my little boy, and I held him. And, you know, I'd been to the antenatal breastfeeding classes. I'd seen women breastfeeding. I kind of knew what the general gist was. And I was like, and he just kind of latched on. And I was like, oh, well, it looks like a breastfeeding. And from that second on, I had this, I don't know, some sort of innate Mother Earth experience where I was never giving that up, you know. And I don't know, because I didn't go into it going, oh, I must breastfeed or else, you know. And I just had this, and it was so sore. Oh my God, it was so sore at the start. And, you know, I had to get my husband to like hold back. It was like a 3-man job to get him to latch. And he had a tongue tie, and he had scratchy fingernails that were like clawing at me at the start. And oh, wow, it was hard. But then it was so easy. You know, maybe 3 or 4 weeks and feeding one day and going, oh, this doesn't actually hurt anymore. God, that was agony before, and now it's fine, you know. And I had some help from different lactation consultant on each of my children, and I fed them until they were not that long compared to, I know other women feed for years, but about 9 months each of them. And they both kind of just got too nosy to feed. You know, it was when they were just looking around all over the place. And I was like, you know, we're ready now. But just that memory of them with their little hand here, and they're looking up into your face, and the contentment and that amazing ability to soothe the child. And, you know, looking at, I mean, I suppose ultimately I'm like a scientist, and just looking at this kind of, oh my God, I have created this person. Sorry, we have created this person. And, you know, brought him into this world, and now look, I'm here, I'm making the food to feed him. Oh my God, isn't my body amazing? So like that to me is just amazing. And all the qualities of breast milk that are different at different times of the day. And it's fascinating. It's so fascinating. And that is actually, I think, the thing that hooked me into breastfeeding initially as my scientist brain before the baby was born. I think this stuff is amazing. And then just that connection and this, I'm not stopping this, even if it is killing me, because it was so sore, but then it was okay.
I
I
love
got
that you.
some.
Oh, sorry, what was that?
Oh, I was just going to say, I got this magic potion called APNO, healing and whatever,
I,
all-purpose nipple ointment. Do you ever have experience with that?
Yes, I didn't know. I was working on the book of breastfeeding stories. I was in Connemara. I was photographing one of the book participants, and her mom has sheep. And
Oh.
one of the things that we were photographing was she said she loved breastfeeding so much because she could literally wear her baby and go out and help her mom with sheep. And then if baby needed fed, she could feed her baby. I didn't know till I was actually out there photographing. The sheep had been sheared recently, and then she was showing me the lanolin in the sheep's wool. So I never knew that that's where lanolin came from. I'd
Came
used
from.
it, I'd availed of it, but I didn't know that was where it came from. So yes. But the other thing I was going to say is that is what I fell in love with around this book that I've been working on. Is it's people try to make breastfeeding just this thing that's off on its own, that it's separate, but we are all people. We're all bringing our experiences. We're all bringing the things that we care about, that interest us. So like you're bringing your scientific brain to the things that you love about breastfeeding and learning about how the milk changes and the composition and all of those things. And it's so we're all people who choose to go on to breastfeed, and we have this experience. It's not, this is just breastfeeding. It's like, it's bringing all of us, it's the completeness of us into it, into that bond and that journey. So yeah, and with the book, I think people confuse what I'm trying to do, and it's like I'm so supportive of everyone who wants to feed regardless of how they want to feed. It's just that there are people, like you mentioned, experiencing the struggle and wanting to continue. There are some people that experience the struggle, they want to continue, they don't know the resources, they don't know how to get the help, and it's trying to fill that gap. It's trying to be an answer to the people that want it but don't know how to sustain it, considering the challenges that they're facing, kind of like you, with people who come in and they have, pelvic health issues, and they're just trying to understand how to navigate the challenges, and you're able to help them with that. So it's thank you for sharing your stories around that. Is there anything else that you'd like to share in relation to either what you do professionally or what you've experienced as a mother?
Ooh, I know that's a big open question, isn't it? Well, I suppose just that, there is help there, and there's a lot of knowledge there, and there's a lot of whatever about my love hate of Instagram, there actually is so much love and support out there among my physio colleagues and other mums. And I think one thing that when you were talking there about you hearing everyone's story, and I find that my job is actually such an honor to meet women who are maybe at a very vulnerable stage, and they're talking to me about their intimate issues, and pain in this area is something, and even in pregnancy, I might be treating someone with back pain in pregnancy who tells me that they know they're having a girl, but no one else knows. Or, I am in such a privileged position to meet these women at this stage in their life. And it's so brilliant to be able to help them. And, I was joking earlier about, the pelvic floor center, we're talking about poo, and it's so glamorous. Women's health physio, the other physios years ago used to be like, oh, how did you get into that? What are you doing that for? And the answer is because it is so amazing to help people. You change their quality of life so much. If you can get someone to be able to go out for a walk without being afraid of leaking, this is a big deal. And to me, it's a bigger deal than, helping somebody up off the rugby pitch. It just to be able to be a part of someone's life at this stage when they're becoming a mother and they're becoming this new self, and to support them on that journey, whether it's with my professional knowledge or I felt that at the same. Oh, let me tell you, this worked for me. Well, oh God, I don't know, can't help you with that one. That we can have this chat and at the moment with the pandemic, my God, it's just so lovely to meet people.
Yeah.
To just be able to interact. I mean, I love meeting people and talking to people, and that's the real lovely thing about physio. Every hour you meet a new person and you solve another problem, and it's all good.
Well, you may have just answered one of my last questions, and that was with the work that you're doing, what is the legacy that you'd like to leave behind with that? We're at WellFed, we're always talking about how we can live a life in a way that it outlives us, how that we can create positive experiences such that they continue on beyond us and outside of us. So what would you like to leave behind as your legacy with the work that you're doing?
I think I might be stealing someone else's marketing strategy, but this catchphrase of "love the skin you're in." What I really hope is that I can help women to become comfortable in the body they have, and to be able to move painlessly and fearlessly, and that they can be active and enjoy their life with their children and with their family and on their own if they want, and without the fear of pain or leakage or anything like that, And also, I suppose, I haven't mentioned it at all here, but I do quite a bit of teaching, and I teach other physios how to examine pelvic floors, and I've done some work with some fit pros and things. And I suppose education is a huge thing, and being able to educate women and educate other professionals, and to share my knowledge and my experience, because if we don't share it and pass it on, then it's lost, isn't it? So
Exactly.
and to make two lovely little people of my children that are, let them grow up to be, I don't know, adults that people want to hang around with, nice, be able to stand on their own 2 feet and just be sound individuals.
Yes.
Important.
So important.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Leah. If people want to get in touch with you, how do they do that? What's the best way for them to contact you?
Well, they can email me, Leah at leahbryansphysiotherapy.com. I work out of Kilcock Physiotherapy Clinic, and so they can call the clinic directly. I might be able to call out the phone number if you want me to.
Yeah, go ahead.
016284674. Fingers crossed, got that right.
I'll double check and make sure it's in the show notes as well, so people can do that.
Thank you. Ever the professional.
Is there anything else that you would like to say before we close out the interview?
Thank you so much, and it was lovely to see you. And good luck with the podcast. I've really enjoyed it, the episodes that I've listened to. And keep up the good work.
Thank you so much. And thank you for sharing your time, your skills, your knowledge with us. I'm so delighted to have had you on the show. And I know that even just what you've done here is going to touch so many people's lives and hopefully help encourage other people to go out, to be more comfortable in their bodies, and to address any challenges that they might have, so they can enjoy their bodies even more and enjoy their life experience at an even fuller level. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
We hope you've enjoyed the show. Please feel free to leave a comment or a review to let us know what you loved about this episode and others like it. And if you'd like to be featured on our show, or if you know of someone who would be an amazing guest, get in touch with us at info@wellfedphotography.com and mention Living a Life Well Fed in the subject line.